Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to another video. This is the day 3 breakdown video from the 4-day build. And in this video, we're going to be discussing how to apply the HydroTurf, a few tips and tricks, and also showing you guys how we applied some vinyl to some key areas in this boat. If you happen to miss the day 1 and 2 video breakdown, I'll leave a link to those above and also in the description down below. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into day 3. At the start of day 3, we kind of got a quick cleanup going just to kind of get our heads together and get the day rolling. We kind of made up a little plan of what we're going to do and how we're going to attack it. Right off the bat, you can see Ronnie is attaching some more angle aluminum to the framing that's already in place in the boat. He's basically making a T with the angle aluminum, and the reason for that is because there's going to be a rod locker lid going on one side and an electrical panel lid going on the other side. Each one of those panels has a 1.5 inch overhang around the outside of them. So once you place those on top of that 1.5 inch angle aluminum, you're not going to have anywhere to attach your .090 decking down to. So by creating a T on both sides, that's giving us a place to rivet down the decking to. Nate is adding some HydroTurf to the interior of the rod locker before we fully install this lid, because it's just easier to do when the lid is off. And then it was time to attach the actual rod locker lid. Once again, adding some tape, some painter's tape in between those seams so none of the shavings from the aluminum get down in there and mess up any of the powder coating that's already been done to the lids, and also makes everything easier to clean up. We did another quick cleanup because we're about to start laying down the HydroTurf. You can see Nate trims off a little bit of this HydroTurf from each side of the sheet and then applies the HydroTurf to the center of the front deck. Alright, so a little bit about this HydroTurf. I have a scrap piece of it right here. We're just going to pretend that this is an entire sheet of HydroTurf. This is the HydroTurf cut groove. It's 3M backed adhesive, very sticky. Underneath there, you just peel this off and it will attach to pretty much anything. Over here, the cut ends just on the outside of the highest part of the turf, and over here it ends right in the middle. So if you were to butt up another new piece next to this, you're gonna have a weird overlay right there. It's not gonna be even. So a good way to take care of that is to kind of sacrifice a little bit on each side of the sheet by cutting in the middle of the lowest area. So I'll go ahead and show you guys that right now. So you can see I trimmed off the excess from both sides to make the sheet even. And this is going to do two things for you. One, when you put the new sheet next to it, everything's going to line up and it's not going to look off. All your grooves are still going to be the same. Two, it's going to put that seam where the two sheets meet recessed into the HydroTurf. So if you were to do it up top, if you end up twisting your foot on here weird or your shoe catches it, it's not going to start lifting up one of the sheets of turf. Because once this stuff comes up, dirt and debris is going to get underneath there, and it might not ever stick back down the way that it did before. So this kind of just helps prevent that from happening and also prolongs the life of your HydroTurf. We also ran some more duplex wiring from the electrical panel to the bow of the boat and started riveting down all of the .090 sheets of decking. We're also applying some more of the vinyl here to the cockpit area of the boat to just give a little bit of contrast between the snow camo and then the vertical areas of the cockpit. While all this was going on, I started making the faceplate for the speakers to be mounted to that's going to be attached to the front deck of the boat. I took my time here. I made tons of measurements because I didn't want this to be off at all. I felt like if one speaker was off just a little bit, it was going to throw the whole look off, and so I was very particular about my measurements and making sure that these were going to look good as a final product. So I started off by tracing the outer lines of the speakers and then measured that flat area on the speakers and just kind of made my measurements inside those lines. And that gave me a rough idea of how big I needed the hole to be. I used the biggest hole saw I could find. That also wasn't big enough, so we had to come through with the jigsaw and keep making cuts in order for these speakers to lay flat against this sheet of aluminum. Once both speakers were laying flat on this sheet of aluminum, I pre-drilled all the holes that we were going to use to attach this sheet to the deck, and then we wrapped it all in vinyl. This is my first time using vinyl, and this is actually the second time that we did this. We did this a time before and had to rip off the vinyl because we completely messed it up. But the second time we used a little bit more heat. I don't think we really did this the best way. Basically, we were peeling off little sections of the backing, sticking it on, and working our way from the center out and then just down. Nate suggested that we just completely take off the backing and then work on laying the sheet down and working it from the center out, which probably would have worked better. But this whole thing was really difficult to do because you had no way of keeping that sheet of aluminum still on the cardboard. I mean, if you had a way to hold it to the table, acting like another set of hands, and that would have helped a lot, but it was really difficult to do, to keep laying everything down and keep that sheet of aluminum still. And I spent a lot of time taking out the bubbles. Once the vinyl was on and everything was good, we added some decals. You are able to purchase these with any state that you want. John just happens to be from Minnesota, so that's the state that was on the TBNation decal. And we also threw a little Tiller Life decal underneath there. Not exactly straight, gave it a little bit of a tilt, and I think it came out really good. While all that was going on, we had to extend the rear deck of the boat into the cockpit. We needed a few inches behind this wall so that the speakers could sit inside of there and we could run the wiring to the electrical panel. Once we had the measurements of the sheet of aluminum that we needed to install in that place to cover all that up, I went ahead and started installing the speakers to this panel as well, doing it the same way as before, hitting it with a little bit of acetone before we applied the vinyl. This panel went much faster and much easier than the first panel did. Once this was done, we wrapped the excess around the sides of the panel. We were able to cut out the holes for the speakers. And when we added the decals, we did have to modify the decals a little bit in order to make them fit in between the two speakers. The decal itself was just too big to fit in between the speakers, so had to do a little bit of trimming there to make it all look good. But overall, I think it came out really nice. While I was working on this panel, the rest of the guys were busy laying out the rest of the HydroTurf, and Mike was neck deep in building that electrical panel. Nate's using a straight edge here in order to cut the seams out between the lids. The GoPro I was using for this time lapse decided to corrupt the last file for day 3, so I don't have the full time lapse for day 3. However, this is basically what the boat looked like when we left that night. We had the cockpit lights on, we had the speakers going, 90% of the HydroTurf was laid. We were setting ourselves up for success for day 4 for sure. So once again, guys, all of the links to the products are going to be in the description below from TBNation.net. If you enjoyed this video and you learned something, please leave a like. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave them in the comment section down below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that little bell button because we still have one more day of this walkthrough. And I still have yet to tell you guys what's in store for 2021. I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.